Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Watt Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile for October 2020. I really wanted to do an update to the Watt deck after I was playing around with some of the different combo setups you could do with the deck. It's a really interesting deck that can take on a bunch of different forms, focusing on more of a control variant, a lockdown variant, or just, straight up aggressive variant of playstyle with the Watt monster's ability to attack your opponent directly and hit for damage while also gaining additional effects when they attack your opponent directly, and also being open to a bunch of different Xyz, Link, and Synchro plays makes for a very versatile and fun deck. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the monsters, I've always been mixing around the different playstyles. I haven't really used the, Watt Lock version, which I've decided to incorporate in this deck profile this time around. But for some of the more important search staples, I run 3 Watt Cobra. This card can attack your opponent directly, and when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent by a direct attack, you can add 1 Watt monster from your deck to your hand. So this is definitely one of your most important Watt monsters, just having search power overall, and being able to hit for pretty big damage against your opponent, 1,000 attack points in total. But that search power, being able to search another Watt monster, including Watt Cobra, just makes it all the better for sure. And then having a combo setup of my choice to just implement another Watt Cobra direct attack for more search makes it all the better as well. And I also run 3 Watt Pheasant. Now, my choice in, lineup varies. I've run 3 Watt Pheasant and also, gone back and forth between 3 Watt Giraffe, but decided to run 3 Watt Pheasant for this deck profile. If you want to run 3 Giraffe, you can instead, drop Pheasant to 2 and put in 3 Giraffe instead. But with Pheasant, this card can attack your opponent directly, and when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent by a direct attack, you select one face-up monster on the field and remove it from play until the end of turn. So with that, you have options to get rid of pesky monsters your opponent may have on the field, ones that are either stopping some of your other plays you may want to do. Being able to get rid of those monsters with Watt Pheasant makes it all the better. You go up against Xyz monsters, even better, getting rid of their Xyz materials when they're banished. Then when they come back onto the field, being relatively weaker because of that. And Watt Pheasant also has 1,000 attack as well, which in total you only need to hit your opponent 8 times normally unless they gain life points to have a game against them. And for the Watt Lock, the 1 Watt monster that does not attack your opponent directly is Watt Hopper, which I also run 3 of. Your opponent cannot select another face-up Watt monster in attack target or target them with card effects. So if you have 2 Watt Hopper on the field, you're basically locking down your opponent for what they can target, since they won't be able to target another Watt Hopper on the field since you already have another one. It basically creates a wall against your opponent. So you want to run 3 of this. You always have the option for this card if your opponent is able to banish one. At least you still have the other 2 Watt Hoppers to rely on for the lock play, and other special summon targets in this deck make it all the better for that lineup as well. For some of the lower numbers for the Watt monsters, I also run 2 Watt Giraffe. This is the one I was speaking of earlier. You could run potentially 3 of this and drop down the number of Watt Pheasant you run to 2. This card can attack your opponent directly. If it inflicts battle damage to your opponent by a direct attack, your opponent cannot activate card or effects until the end of this turn. So with this, like I said, it's a potential lockdown when you attack with this card. It doesn't provide any search or get rid of any resources your opponent may have on the field, but still great because then you can activate any cards with no fear, including the Watt Cobra play. But the only thing, like I said, with the Watt Cobra play, you can special summon Giraffe off of the play they can do, but then, your opponent would more than likely stop that play if they knew what combo you were going for with it. So that's why I'm running the 2 of this card for the setup. You want to have Watt Giraffe already on the field, and there are plenty of other ways to search and special summon this card out onto the field to make use of. But once again, if you wanted to run 3, just take out 1 of the Pheasant and put in a 3rd copy of Watt Giraffe. For the tuners, because like I said, there are synchro options in the Watt deck as well, I run 2 Watt Fox. If this card is destroyed by your opponent's card, either by battle or card effect, and your opponent cannot special summon a monster or activate spell or traps or spell or trap effects or monster card effects for the rest of this turn. So just another great shutdown card. Being your level 2 tuner makes it easy to synchro summon into the level 6 Watt Chimera as well. But also just having that shutdown option, if you don't have any other monsters to rely on, you can summon this card, your opponent destroys it, and then they're done for the turn. They can't really do anything else. They can have their, summon or their monster effects or spell and traps, you name it. It basically is the end of the line for them with that play setup. And lastly, for the Watt monsters, I run the 1 Watt Dragonfly. Now, recycling resources from the graveyard is another big part of the deck for sure. So being able to set them up with cards like Watt Dragonfly make it all the more better for the combos. If you didn't want to go for the synchro lineup and run more of an Xyz play, you can take out the 2 Watt Fox and put in a playset of Watt Dragonfly just for more and more resources to go into by special summoning Watt monsters from your deck onto the field, and also being able to summon out Watt Dragonfly from Watt Dragonfly could add to a potential stall tactic as well if you need be for removing the Watt Fox for that play. Or you can even drop some of the other numbers down of, let's say, Watt Pheasant, and also try to run the 2 Watt Hopper if you want to increase this number also. And then for the rest of the monsters in the deck, this can be a hand trap spot for Ash Blossom, Effect Veiler, or even Ghost Ogre or Nibiru. I decided to go for the 3 Honest, focusing more on the control play style of the deck, being able to protect your Watt monsters on the field when your opponent may try to attack into them. We have a pretty good amount of back row in the deck for protection as well, and also just other lockdown capabilities in the deck. So having Honest to rely on to protect my monsters and also deal damage to my opponent when they try and attack into me is one of my favorite plays to still go for it with any light attribute deck also. And that is it for the monsters. We'll now move on to the spells. One of the newest spells we got for the deck back during Chaos Impact was Watt Train. You add Watt cards with different names from your deck to your hand, except for Watt Train, up to the number of Thunder-type monsters you control with different names. And during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard to special summon as many Watt monsters as possible with different names from your hand. And you can only use each effect of Watt Train once per turn. So the search power with Watt Cobra adds immensely to this card, being able to search out those cards and then special summon them with Train during the main phase, but also being able to add different Watt cards and not just limited to monsters gives us more cards to rely on for that search power as well from our hand, except for Watt Train. But you can add monsters if you wish, and then have other ways to special summon them also. For the additional Watt cards, I only run the 1 Watt Scene and the 1 Watt Castle, keeping this playstyle since my last deck profile. It's still my preferred number, with Watt Castle not being a boost card for the Watts, but more lowering your opponent's monster's attack when it battles a Watt monster. Losing 1,000 attack after damage calculation is a great field spell for just reducing my opponent's power, and then being able to hit over those monsters with my Watt monsters. Even though they can't attack directly, it's just great if I have to get rid of those monsters because they could be a pesky problem later on. And the Watt Scene, when a Thunder-type monster you control inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you gain life points equal to that damage inflicted. So we do have some traps and other spells that do take away from our life points, which were, dwindling down my opponent's life points. So having Watt Scene as a searchable card with Watt Train, but also just life point gain and not a once per turn life point gain if you have the direct attack power of all your different Watt monsters, it's just that much more, beneficial, gaining more and more life after you lose life from those other cards in the deck. And I also run the 2 recycling batteries, recycle power, as the name says for this card. You target 2 Thunder-type monsters with 1,500 or less attack in your graveyard and add those targets to your hand. You can add pretty much anything from the monster lineup except for Honest back to your hand to use with this, having all less than 1,500 attack. So resources to add back, and then just more cards to rely on for attacking your opponent directly with this card. And I also run the 3 Photon Lead. This is one of my favorite spells for the combo, which I'll go over at the end of the video. Definitely hitting for a lot of damage. You special summon 1 level 4 lower light monster from your hand in face-up attack position. This is also another great way to get out the Watt Hopper lock. You will summon it in attack position, but if you have another Watt Hopper on the field, there's not much to fear for it, because you'll have the lock set up. Your opponent won't be able to attack or target them with card effects, and then next turn you can just switch them to defense to play off the combo a little more. And even if they were to get rid of them, they would have to get rid of them at the together, since it has to rely on a card that can't target. And Photon Lead just gives us more and more special summon onto the field, including more Cobra or the search targets off of Cobra for more offensive power against your opponent. And for more of the lockdown capabilities, I like to run 3 Messenger apiece. For those that don't know with this card, you must pay 100 life points at the start of each of your standby phases. If you cannot pay, this card is destroyed. All monsters with an attack of 1,500 points or more cannot attack. This is your go-to lockdown card in the deck, being able to stop your opponent from attacking with any of their more powerful monsters. Having to rely on 1,500 or less makes this a very, very scary card for more than that attack point number. And then also also, you only have to pay 100 life points each to keep this on the field. So as long as you have the one to go for, if your opponent destroys it, there's the potential that in that time that they couldn't attack and you stalled out, you drew the second one to rely on also. And even if you don't, you have other trap cards to stop your opponent from destroying this card and also protecting your own monsters. And for the one-ofs in the deck, I run the one Call by the Grave. If you don't like running one Call by the Grave, you can also have the Harpy's Feather Duster be in this spot for the deck. I also run the one for one, and the one Monster Reborn being the special summon option from the graveyard for more Watt Hopper targets. And one for one is directly meant to special summon out Watt Hopper from the deck to the field, because then you can normal summon or special summon with Photon Lead the second Watt Hopper onto the field to initiate the Hopper lock on the field for protecting your other Watt monsters while your other Watts attack your opponent directly. And that is it for the spells. We'll now move on to the traps. I run 3 Solemn Strike. This is our additional back row protection along with Messenger of Peace, taking care of pesky monsters my opponent may summon out that could destroy any of my resources on the field that I need for my key combo plays. So this is a very, very useful counter trap along with Solemn Judgment, which can also help to protect against Messenger of Peace. It definitely does cut into the life point gain, but even if you pay half your life and you have your Messenger of Peace on the field, as long as you have that setup, you won't be taking that much life against your opponent, because you'll still have the 39 potential turns if your opponent doesn't inflict any other point of damage to you, and just the other Solemn Strikes, which you could deal damage first with this, paying life, and then paying half with Solemn Judgment, still being a lower life point cost, but also having the option with cards like Watt Scene to heal all of that life you spent to use these counter traps also. And lastly, for the traps, just the 2 Storming Mirror Force. If you have Infinite Impermanence, you can put this in as that final spot, also taking out a third copy of Solemn Strike for a third copy of Impermanence, but just another great one if your opponent summons a monster that doesn't, that gets around Messenger of Peace, basically. You can activate this, bouncing the card back to their hand. If it was an extra deck monster, making it all the better because it'll return to the extra deck. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. I run the 1 Watt Chimera. This is your go-to synchro most of the time. Being 1400 attack, it also gets around Messenger of Peace. It can attack your opponent directly, so being able to inflict 1400 points of damage is that much scarier. And after this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent by a direct attack, you place 1 random card from your opponent's hand on the top of their deck. So if they just have the 1 resource and they're relying on more cards to draw into to help them with their plays, this card can completely shut that down, being able to then, put it on the top of the deck, they draw into it, you inflict damage again, put it on the top of the deck, and they won't ever be able to go or get out of this combo because they won't be receiving any new cards to use. I also run 1 Watt Hydra, a little more difficult to summon out, but still possible with Watt Fox, a level 4, and a Watt Hopper on the deck. It can be even an additional Watt Hopper if you just have the 1 and no way to get to the second copy. It can attack your opponent directly. When it inflicts battle damage to your opponent by a direct attack, choose 1 card in your deck and remove it from play. Add that card to your hand during your second standby phase after activation of this effect. Well, still liking Chimera more. It's just another synchro option to go into if you need the attack directly play or just a specific card added to your hand to use also. And for the Xyz, which I definitely go into a lot as well, I run the 1 Bujinte Tsukuyomi, discard draw power. If you have your cards set up on the field, being able to at least draw with our light monsters being used for the Xyz plays makes it all the better. Same with Star Leech Paladynamo, being able to get over some of my opponent's more powerful monsters. 1 Gaga Cowboy, the burn damage with all the attacking directly in this deck makes for a very useful Xyz for sure. Also 1 41 Baguska for more of the stall tactics. 1 Abyss Dweller, 1 Tornado Dragon. The 1 number 39 Utopia and the Utopia of the Lightning work very well with Honest as well, being light attribute. And for the Link monsters, I run the 1 Nightmare Phoenix, the 1 Nightmare Cerberus. The 1 Cross Sheep works great with the Synchro and Xyz monsters we run. Hit Potion Engen, sometimes the Power Boost works. If I more prefer to use this if I don't have Messenger of Peace set up, because then some of my Watt monsters won't be able to hit, being over the 1500 mark for Messenger of Peace. And lastly, the 1 Nightmare Unicorn for shuffle back power against my opponent also when I need that more than destruction capabilities. But that is it for the deck. As for the combo, I preferred with it relying on your Watt Cobra and also your Photon Lead. If you have an additional Photon Lead, or the more the better for the play in your hand, if you summon your Watt Cobra and attack your opponent directly and inflict the 1000 points of damage, you'll use your Watt Cobra. When it inflicts battle damage to your opponent by a direct attack, you add 1 Watt monster from your deck to your hand, so you will add a second Watt Cobra. Having the 1 already set up on the field, you will then activate your Photon lead, then being able to summon a level 4 lower light monster from your hand in face-up attack position, you will summon the second Watt Cobra, and then attack directly again with this Watt Cobra, searching out another monster. You can even search out the third Watt Cobra, activating the second Photon lead if you have it in your hand to summon Watt Cobra once more, and then attacking your opponent again with this Watt Cobra. If they have nothing to stop it, all the better. If you were going to run your Harpy's Feather Duster instead of your Call of the Grave, you can also clear the back row to have no fear from those cards also. Getting your final search off of the Watt Cobra as well makes it all the better, giving you a resource for the next turn to use. If you already had the setup or fear your card your opponent may use, you can summon the Watt Giraffe, attack with this, and then use the Photon lead to go into the Watt Cobra with that play, hitting and not having to fear your opponent's back row as long as they clear the Watt Giraffe play. It's more risky, but you'll still get your search off of the second one and not have as many special summons for the lead, as long as you have the Watt Giraffe to rely on. And you also have to have the Cobra in your hand already, because you can't search it off of the Watt Giraffe. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. It's definitely a very, very fun deck if you're looking for a very budget one at that also to play. This is definitely one to look into. Also, if you just like, playing more control-based against your opponent, stall tactic plays, the Watt deck is definitely for you. But until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.